Hi, my name is Wade Watts, and this is my story.
It's the year 2044 and the world has become a shadow of the place it used to be. The world is in a major energy crisis caused by the lack of resources. There are about half a dozen wars going on, widespread poverty and famine, along with catastrophic climate change. Because of this, the world has decided to live in the virtual escape of the oasis.
The living conditions described in the story are the results of the lack of resources and how people dealt with this insufficiency. Lack of resources affects everything. This goes from living conditions, quality of life, and anything between the earth and the sun. The lack of resources in the book shows us one of the many possible futures for humanity if changes aren't made. It can still be stopped from going beyond redemption, but to do that, changes need to be made right now. Humanity will always need resources because otherwise everyone is condemned. Water is a resource that no living thing can survive without. Just the lack of water would do substantial damage to the quality of life for everyone and everything. Other resources like energy supplies, such as oil, coal, and gas, are of great importance, but they can be replaced with things like wind, solar, and green energy. Even though they can't be replaced, it doesn't mean that it's possible to spend it carelessly and waste them all. This will lead to energy supplies drying up before a sustainable green solution can be found, and that could lead to an energy crisis like in the book. By looking at this, it can be seen that resources are a quintessential part of life for humans, and that living without them isn't exactly an option. So for humanity's sake, and to try to help the planet, humans need to take better care of their resources and be more frugal with them.
Now back to me.
My story is basically about the hunt and how it went. I was just your typical teenage resident of the stacks. The stacks are basically just stacked up mobile homes, RVs, and other things that people live in, and the outskirts of the city, made when the energy crisis hit and no one had a place to live. So this was the cheapest solution. When James Halliday, a renowned video game designer, passed away, he created a video game contest, and whoever won would get all of his fortunes. This included a few $100 billion, all of his possessions, and complete control over the oasis, which he had created and was now where most of humanity spent their lives. I was one of these people. This was because the real world sucked. There was nothing there except poverty, crime, and a constant reminder of how humanity had fallen into an endless wormhole of ugliness. While all of this was happening, the oasis had everything. And I mean everything. So why wouldn't I want to spend all the time I could in the paradise that the oasis was? Now getting back to the hunt. This prize that Halliday was offering to the whole world was called Halliday's Easter egg. Everyone who tried finding it were referred to as egg hunters, which eventually ended up being shortened to gunters. The hunt was like one big scavenger hunt for the biggest prize in history. The first clue was on the first page of Anorak's almanac, where it said,
3 hidden keys open 3 secret gates, wherein the errant will be tested for worthy traits, and those with the skill to survive these straits will reach the end where the prize awaits.
Throughout Anorak's almanac, there were letters with little hooks on them, which when combined, gave the first clue as to where the copper key was hidden.
The copper key awaits explorers in a tomb filled with horrors, but you have much to learn if you hope to earn a place among the high scorers.
This was known as the Limerick. The Limerick referenced that the copper key would be on the planet Ludes in a replica of the Tomb of Horrors, a Dungeons & Dragons game that Halliday loved. There the Gunter would have to get through all the same obstacles as in the Dungeons & Dragons module. Once they reached the end, they would have to play a game of joust with the Demolic and win in order to gain the copper key. When the copper key was found, on it was the clue as to where to find the copper gate. The copper gate was inside Halliday's childhood home on the planet Middletown. To access the gate, the Gunters had to play the game of Dungeons of Daggerath while being in possession of the copper key. Once that was done, the Gunter had to reenact one of Halliday's favorite movies, War Games, as an interactive simulation. After reenacting the movie without failing, the Gunter would get out of the simulation and get the next clue. This clue gave the location of the Jade Key.
The captain conceals the jade key in a dwelling long neglected, but you can only blow the whistle once the trophies are all collected.
This was called the quatrain because of its structure. The captain in the poem is a reference to a Captain Crunch cereal box that hides the key. This cereal box is hidden in a dwelling long neglected, which is a reference to the video game Zork. The last 2 lines refer to collecting all the trophies in the Zork simulation and blowing the whistle that came with the Captain Crunch cereal. By blowing said whistle, it turned into the Jade Key. Like on the copper key, the Jade Key had a clue. This clue is mainly the silver foil that the key was wrapped in. This foil was a reference to the film Blade Runner, where there's a similar foil that makes an origami unicorn. When the word unicorn is said, the foil starts folding itself into one like in the movie, and that leads whoever possesses it to the Jade Gate, which is hidden inside one of the many Tyrell buildings. The clue given on the key, "Continue your quest by taking the test," refers to the Voight-Kampff machines used in the movie to test a replicant. In the Jade Gate, the gunter would have to play a real-life version of the game Black Tiger without losing. As a reward for completing the game, each gunter that won got a giant robot. Once this was done, they'd get a clue on where to find the third and final key, the Crystal Key. This was a red circle with a 5-pointed star in the middle and a reference to 112, Rush's sci-fi themed album. On this album, the song The Temple of Syrinx contained the location of the Crystal Key.
We are the priests of the temples of Syrinx. Our great computers fill the hallowed halls. We are the priests of the temples of Syrinx. All the gifts of life are held within our walls.
The key was on the planet Syrinx, and to find it, the gunter had to know the song lyrics to the Temple of Syrinx and find a guitar. After finding the guitar, it turned into the Crystal Key. The gunter would have to get the final clue to unlock the Crystal Gate by playing the song Discovery from the same album.
The first was ringed in red metal, the second in green stone. The third is clear as crystal and cannot be unlocked alone.
The Crystal Gate was inside Anorak's castle, which had previously been completely impenetrable, but could now be entered by anyone possessing the Crystal Key. Once at the gate, the words charity, hope, and faith were all inscribed into the gate's door. This was a reference to Schoolhouse Rock. By saying 3 is a magic number, a lyric from the song, the gate began to glow, and 2 extra keyholes appeared. Then, at the same time, all 3 keys had to be turned, and the gate would open. Inside this last and final gate, the gunter would have to go through a series of challenges to conquer the quest of the hunt. The first challenge was to top Halliday's high score without dying in a real-life simulation of the video game Tempest. After that, the second challenge was to reenact Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Finally, the last challenge was to play Adventure on the Atari 2600 and find the Easter egg inside. This was the Easter egg, as in Halliday's Easter egg.
We are here with Wade Watts. Now Wade, what is your living situation like?
Not great. I live in a trailer in the stacks, which is where today's problems are most obvious. The lack of space and resources to make housing has led to trailers being stacked together to make the stacks.
Now, how does this affect you?
It's the only way of living I've ever experienced. I don't know any other way of life.
Now, has this affected your usage of the Oasis?
Yes, of course. I live inside the Oasis. It's where I spend most of my days. It's where I can do what I want to do and be who I want to be. And when the real world is so bad, why wouldn't I want to go where everything is perfect?
That was Wade Watts, everybody, better known as the famous gunter, Possible.
We have Artemis here today, as you well know. Artemis, would you say that the lack of resources has affected you?
Yes, it has affected us all. It is why the world is like what it is today, dark and full of crime.
What is your living situation like?
I live in a small suburban house in Vancouver, Canada. I could be considered rather lucky when it comes to my living situation when compared with most people. However, I am still fully aware of the problems people face today, although I myself am not in the center of coverts.
How would you describe your Oasis usage?
I like most people spend near to all my time in the Oasis. That is the norm. It's what everybody does.
Thank you, Artemis, for taking time to do this interview with us today. Now to H. H, first of all, thank you for being here.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
Now, what would you say your living situation is like?
Well, I wouldn't say it's great. I live in a van and drive all around the US. But I have everything I need, so I can't really complain.
How would you say the lack of resources in today's world has affected you?
Probably the same way it affected everyone. Doing anything in the real world is too expensive, so most of the time I spend is in the Oasis.
So would you say the lack of resources has affected your Oasis usage?
Yes, definitely. The Oasis is where I spend all of my free time.
That was H. Og, thanks for being here. Now, how would you describe your living situation?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I would say I'm one of the lucky ones. I have it quite good. I have a nice house in Oregon.
And how would you say the lack of resources has affected you?
Yeah, the way the world is today saddens me. Seeing how we've destroyed our planet and how has impacted people, makes me emotional. People cope with their day-to-day life is by going to the oasis because they can't handle the real world. That's pretty much how bad the situation is at the moment.
Does this affect your usage of the Oasis?
Oh, I personally don't use the Oasis at all. I did use it to keep track of the Easter egg hunt, but I hardly ever use it.
So, in whole, it's safe to say that in life, resources will always be needed, even in the oasis of virtual reality.